Okay, here's the worst case scenario. A Phoenix canariensis that was installed about 2 or 3 years ago. My client, he didn't hire me then. He didn't know about me, but he hired some guys from San Diego where this disease is just rampant. And shipped this tree up here and planted it, and then also planted another tree over there. So that one over there is a female, as you see the orange bracts, whereas the one over here is a male, and it doesn't make those seed pod structures. It just makes small little seed pod that makes pollen, and so you don't really see it. Always better to have the male when it comes to this kind of thing. That's not being sexist. Don't call me sexist for telling you to get a male canary palm. Anyway, back to the point here. So I don't recommend using this tree at all, period, because of this problem. Okay? This disease originated in France, I believe, southern France, like in 1976, I think. It's been a while since I saw the information. It got imported into California about 1990, made its way to San Mateo by about, I think, 99 from people moving trees up from Southern California. It basically ran rampant through Southern California, and now it's basically epidemic down there. No, pandemic? I don't know what's the right word. It's all over, saturated. These people still sell these trees. I'm sure the people who sold this gentleman this tree didn't say anything about this disease. And it takes 2 or 3 years for this disease to build up critical mass to get to a point where it does this to the tree, where it basically it attacks the foliage. It prevents the foliage from taking up water. It shuts down the water mechanics of the plant. It's called Fusarium oxysporon variety canariensis because it's more or less specific to the canary palm. Now, the ground will typically get infected as well. The way that the plant is thought to catch the disease primarily is through infected chainsaws. So if you were to trim this tree here and then use the same saw or the climbing spikes or anything else that cuts into the tree, into live tissue, and go trim that tree over there, it's almost certain within a year or 2 or 3 or 4, or who knows how long it can sit before it gets to critical mass, and it'll eventually probably kill that tree too. It's just like injecting COVID into someone, you know. It might take them a few days to get sick, but they're going to probably get sick unless they're immune. But there are no canary palms that are immune, as we know. What else is there to know about this thing? So it also infects the hole, so that generally you try to plant a new tree and 3 years later that one dies. I've seen hotels do this over and over. So best just to not use this tree. If you are going to use this tree, then you certainly don't want to buy a tree from Southern California. The only way you'd want to get big trees like this, and the way we do it, is we find trees in Northern California from people's yards that don't want them anymore. They got too big on them. We look for trees that haven't been trimmed in 3 years, which seems to be the gestation period of this pathogen. And we also look for trees that are fairly isolated, and we drive the neighborhood to see if we see any infected trees in the neighborhood. If all of that checks out, then we will take that tree, but only after telling the client they should use something else. But a lot of times they insist because they're such beautiful trees. And then once you get that tree, we give you a brand new chainsaw that we use to trim it. And then you should only trim that tree with that same saw. And don't let anybody climb it with spikes or do anything really that might get into the water delivery system of the plant, including the trunk, the fronds, and the roots. And so that's the dilemma of using a canary palm. If you can isolate the tree and get it to your property without the pathogen riding in, then you have a pretty good chance of, long-term success. But if you buy a tree from an infested area, from a nursery who is conglomerating trees together in a yard, invariably that disease, that pathogen is going to be in the dirt, in the dust, in the equipment, and everything they do. And I just happened to be driving by a place, the biggest producer of these trees in Southern California. They go around and collect them from neighborhoods, just like I do. But instead of sending them directly to the end user, they consolidate them in a yard. It's like a 3 or 4 acre yard. And in the middle of, all around the perimeter of the yard are these trees that are all trimmed up and beautiful and ready to go. In the middle of the yard is this huge pile of dead bodies. I talked to a guy who worked there, and he's like, oh yeah, if a tree gets sick, we separate it from the other trees and we throw it in the middle of the yard in a pile. Imagine a pile of Ebola victims piled up in the middle of an ER unit or an ER waiting room while you come in. You think that's a good idea? No. So the best thing is, don't ever let these trees come in contact with other trees or anywhere near them that have the pathogen or may have the pathogen. So that's the story. After all that, I don't recommend this tree. Chilean wine palm, true date palm, coconut queen, queen palm, queen Budia hybrid, Budia jubea hybrid, anything but this. So big Washingtonia hybrids, Brahia clara, Brahia armata, Brahia edulis. Sure, there's nothing as big and grandiose, but you know what? You should probably try to get something that you'll never have to take out. Look at how hard this is. He's built all this stuff around this tree. Now it's going to be really difficult to get this tree out of here. And anyway, we're going to replace with something like that. Maybe a big Butia capitata would look good there. And that's the whole story. So now you know.